This agenda is informed by the Pacific Aid for Trade Strategy 2020-2025, a document that was endorsed by our foreign trade ministers in 2020, and that sets the priorities of our regional trade initiatives. So in today's session, we will reflect on implementations of the strategy by looking at some lessons learned, but also introduce some of our partnership and think about new priorities. So the first part of today's sessions, which I have the pleasure to moderate, we look at lessons learned. And the second part will focus on partnership, which will be moderated by Mr. Ravi Kewaram from the Australian Government DFAT. So before introducing our speakers, I will briefly try to set the scene by providing an overview of our regional aid for trade strategy and its implementation. So, Excellencies, senior officials, and the participants, if I can just indulge you for a minute, I just need to get my presentation on screen. Thank you. And senior officials, just in terms of the Pacific Aid for Trade Strategy, which has been concluded in 2020, the consultation started in 2017. And that's during the Aid for Trade Global Review. The next slide. So the consultations started in 2017 and then presented during the 2019 Aid for Trade Global Review. And there are 4 main priorities with some of the subcomponents as well. So you will see here, we have services, connectivity, and that links to labor mobility, as well as electronic commerce, and deepening for our market, which we have subcomponent of trade facilitation, quality infrastructure, trade policies and trade agreements, including as well a cover work that we are doing. On the slide 2, so you will see here the regional methodology for the regional initiative. So we have different activities that we are already implementing. So you will see quality infrastructure, e-commerce, and trade facilitation. And you will also note that at this stage, we have national diagnostic studies, regional diagnostic study, and also a regional strategy on e-commerce, and now developing a trade facilitation one, as well as the quality infrastructure work that is now underway. We have also, in terms of the implementation, we can see that quality infrastructure and e-commerce are now under implementation. And in terms of coordination and governance, we have already established the standardizations committee under the quality infrastructure. So e-commerce will soon be starting in terms of having regional coordination mechanism. On slide 3, just very quickly, I think you will see in terms of the quality infrastructure, the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat and its partners have already established regional governance bodies and coordination mechanism as earlier alluded to. And we have undertaken detailed regional assessments on standards, testing, and metrology, and also providing capacity building national and regional bodies. So we commence as well quality infrastructure, quality value chain work in selected sectors. And I think some of it will be mentioned by one of our speakers in terms of the value chain sectors in some of the least developed countries of the region. And we're also procuring strategic equipment to support quality enhancement. And as you will note that the key implementing partners, the Caribbean Organizations for Standard and Quality, as well as German Meteorology Institute, Standard Australia, the Australian Meteorology Institute, and soon with United Nations Industrial Development Organization. On slide 4, in terms of the e-commerce, you will see on the screen that we have a number of partners that are actually supporting the Secretariat in implementing the Pacific Aid for Trade e-commerce strategy, And this e-commerce strategy has been approved by Forum Trade Ministers meeting in August 2021, based on the UNCTAD e-readiness methodology that has been used. And as you can see from the slide, the Pacific e-commerce initiative has brought together a number of partners here. So we are already undertaking work in many of the 7 e-commerce policy areas. So beyond its coordination role, the Secretariat also supporting implementations by assisting with the development of national strategies, as well as supporting the development of regional statistics, trainings, our members on e-commerce negotiations, and developing practical toolkit for our MSMEs. So just for your information, participants, that a regional e-commerce portal will be launched later next month to serve as a regional repository for our initiative. And I hope today's participants will be also able to join this important event, which will be held in a hybrid mode. So very quickly in the slide 5. So with e-commerce and quality infrastructure implementation well underway, the attention is now turning to other priority areas, including trade facilitations, for which a regional strategy is currently underway. The services is an area where we are planning to develop a very comprehensive initiative as well, and also the cover strategy that the Secretariat is now working with members to develop. So our target is that by end of 2025, regional initiative will be in place for all the priorities identified by the Pacific Aid for the Trade in compliance with the mandate received by the Forum Trade Ministers meeting. So after this brief overview, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first 2 panelists, who are Mr. Viraj Lan and Mr. Jamil Abdelaziz. So very quickly, in terms of Mr. Viraj biography, he's a CEO of Bikabai and a company limited, the largest manufacturer of Indian sweets and snacks in Fiji. He is the 4th generation in the family line. Before committing full-time to his company, Viraj worked as an accounting tutor at the University of South Pacific and as manager at an international insurance broking firm in Fiji. Mr. Jamil is also newly elected, or I would say, chair of the recently established Pacific Regional Standard Committee, and he works for the government of New Caledonia as Deputy Director for Purchasing, Wealth and Resource. So among his achievements in the creation of compulsory insurance system for construction, something which required intensive work in many areas of quality infrastructure. Before working in New Caledonia, Jamil was based in France, where he worked as Chief Technical Manager for the Hospital of Toulouse and Orléans. Each speaker will have 10 minutes in total to answer my questions as well as any questions coming from the public. So I would now like to start with Viraj. The reason why Viraj is here with us today is that in our view, it can help us to reflect upon the practical challenges and opportunities related to e-commerce, for instance. So, but also help us prioritizing implementations of our priorities, regional measures. So, dear Viraj, I would be grateful if you can tell us a bit about your story. What are the challenges you faced, the opportunities you seized, and the lessons you learned in your journey, online journey? And then I'll come to the second point.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon from Fiji. Am I able to share a slide, please? Yes. Right. So this is our perspective. Can you all see the slides? Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, good, thank you. So this is what I've put together for us today, something about us, how we got into e-commerce, what we learned, the challenges and the opportunities. So like as we were introduced, we've been in Fiji for some time. I'm a fourth-generation family member. We've got 5 retail shops and we employ about 100 people. And we're currently doing export business to consumer and business to business as well on special events. Getting techie. So we've got a lot of people from Fiji who live in Australia, New Zealand, US, and have very deep cultural and family bonds here in Fiji. And they grew up with our product, they know our product, and they wanted it with them wherever they live. And so getting our product from Fiji to wherever they were, the only challenge was it was perishable. So we had to think outside the box, and e-commerce was the only way. And we had to use logistics partner DHL, who could take our product in a very quick and safe way. So we launched our e-commerce website in March 2021, and this is just before the second lockdown. And the timing was just opportune because that's when our sales really rocketed, and we realized that we've just opened the shop and there's a lot of customers waiting. So you can see on the right hand side that the orders were coming from Australia, New Zealand, US. There's gifting in Fiji as well and in other parts of the world. And there's people who bought locally as well. Moving on. So one of the things we did back in 2015, we actually started off with a brochure website. We had no experience in doing website sales. And in 2016, given the feedback that we got from our customers, we added product prices and added a manual credit card system. So there's no e-commerce really. And later on, we realized that there were a lot of customers using analytics who visited our website but were not buying. And they left when it came to the payment side of it because they had to fill in a credit card application form. So then we put on a project that we needed to get a full e-commerce website and keep it ready by 2019, but that did not happen because of COVID. So what we learned over here was understanding our customer, what they wanted, and we went step by step. And what the forum in which we are talking and what I've seen just before I started this presentation is amazing. And I can totally relate to that. Other thing that we learned was to know our customers, we added a live chat feature, which was very helpful. And that's how we came to know what customers were looking for, what they wanted, and how better we can improve our website. So we started small and learned our way up. It took us time, but we made sure that we listened to our customers, and that's how we grow. The challenges, and I suppose this is an area that this forum would be most interested in, is that the banks are not really seriously looking into it. When we started off this project, we only had 2 banks who were offering e-commerce compared to the 5 banks we had in Fiji, big banks, I'd say. And when we approached them, there's a lengthy paperwork requirements, which is fine, but it's just too cumbersome. And in just before COVID came into Fiji, the first phase, Viticard, which is an initiative by Vodafone, the government really started to lobby hard with the banks to improve digital platform. And Fiji's Viticard was one of the e-commerce websites where a lot of vendors could come together and put their product on that site, and the payment process, everything was streamlined. Other challenge that we found was the shipping charges from Pacific Island countries. I suppose Fiji is bigger to other small island countries like Samoa, Tonga, Solomon Islands. And the NLC shows that 55% of the value of the goods purchased was actually the value of shipment. So if somebody bought sweets for $100, $55 was just shipment. So that's another area that we found a lot of challenges. But we were blessed because our product is something that was in demand. People did buy. And the small island nations, I don't suppose they enjoy the economies of scale of shipping. We compared ourselves to big guys like Amazon. Sometimes there's free shipping as well. We could not do all of that. And I put some links on some other articles that we've shared in public. So when e-commerce came, our website sales went up 10 times. That was a great opportunity. We processed over 220 orders in the first year in a single seasonal month. Just yesterday, I was seeing we've crossed 500 orders for about 18 months now. And we also realized that 50% of our sales was derived from customers either buying for family abroad or friends living in Fiji. So the payment basically is coming in from overseas for either local consumption for people over here or for it to be sent back to them. So that meant foreign exchange for Fiji, and that was really good. To overcome the high shipping charges, we partnered with a business in New Zealand who would wholesale our product and would make it cheaper. So that's another thing that we did. So in terms of opportunities, yes, e-commerce holds a lot. We were surprised in the level of sales that we got, and it was a very exciting moment for us. So that's basically about us. That's a picture of our product being sold in New Zealand during Eid this year. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, thank you very much, Viraj, for this very insightful presentation. And I think you have also responded to the second question that I wanted to ask in terms of how the Pacific e-commerce strategy is actually useful to face the challenges that you will encounter in terms of the online journey. I'm now going to open the floor for any questions, and I would encourage everyone to just put your questions in the chat box, and then I will ask the presenter to respond to the questions. Yes, I can see hands up.
Good morning from Geneva.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I think the presentation was very interesting. I was just wondering, given that there was a reference to like big online platforms and that local e-commerce platforms cannot compete, mentioning Amazon, I was wondering in how far opportunities were explored to integrate into existing e-commerce platforms, whether there are some options to integrate into international big e-commerce platforms for firms like the one presented today. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you for that question. I do understand the question, what you're asking for. And from what we know locally, there's nothing available really. Because the product, every product has got a different weight, and based on the volumetric weight, DHL charges a particular rate. So we felt that our website was quite unique in the sense that what we sold and how we sold it. So no, we'd love to hear if there's any opportunities over there. And I did read the e-commerce readiness and strategy formulation, and there's a lot of contents over there that really made me wow. These are the things that these are being worked on, such as 3.2.1 on a regional freight assistance package for lower freight cost. That was amazing. So no, we did not explore any option, if that is to answer your question.
Thank you very much, Julia, and also the presenter for your response. I think I have maybe one or two more questions coming from the chat. I just wanted to maybe ask you, Viraj, about this VT card. Just, I think one of our participants said that's interested to hear more about the value of VT card to the development of business.
Sure. VT card basically is a product of Vodafone, initiated by the government. Vodafone Fiji is owned by FNPF, obviously, and with the members, they wanted to have more transactions. So we've got hardware chain, we've got grocery shops, we've got beauty product selling. There's so many people who have come on board. So initially it was corporates, and then during COVID, government encouraged and gave a subsidy for local businesses to come in and join in VT card. It's been quite successful during COVID when there's lockdown, and I personally bought stuff myself as well, but I'm not too sure if that's the case anymore once the restrictions have been lifted. So what I'd like to also share is the payment gateway in terms of the payment methodology. Another Vodafone product, M-Pesa. So I checked up some data from Vodafone guys, and Fiji has a population of about 900,000. They have currently 280,000 M-Pesa active connected people. And there's a transaction of value of about 200 Fijian dollars per month that happens every month. And remittance is 25 million per month. And this is only because of the low cost of transaction. And M-Pesa, it's like mobile money wallet. And this is well regulated by Reserve Bank. And during COVID, government gave out COVID assistance to a lot of its FNPF members of June to about 200 million through M-Pesa. So this is, I believe, from the presentation. I also read about 5.1.4 on fintech-based solutions. So two things went in hand: one having a card, and the other having very easy methods of payment. Not everybody has a credit card.
Viraj, for this response. I think we have a number of chat coming in, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So just to thank you for your insightful interventions. Now we are moving towards the quality infrastructure. I will give the floor to Jamil. So Jamil, I think you have received the two questions. I would just wanted that, just provide to the participants what have been your main achievements and what are the initiative key objective for the future. And as the chair of the newly established Pacific Regional Standard Committee, can you share your views on the potential of regional approaches to quality infrastructure in general for standardizations in particular? Over to you. You are on mute, Jamil. Jamil, we cannot hear you.
Yes, sorry, I didn't. Can you hear me now?
We proceed.
Okay, that's nice. So I was explaining that our most important achievement has certainly been to put quality infrastructure that I will call QI now on the agenda for the Pacific. The general understanding for the importance of quality infrastructure has certainly grown since the start of PQI initiative. There are now significantly more people who know about the role of standards and international good practice for standard development, but also about methodology that has something to do with measurement. And how important is it that laboratories deliver reliable results so that companies can export their products and decision makers can make good policy decisions. Moreover, the initiative has helped to breathe life into regionalism as a fundamental policy paradigm for the Pacific Island Forum. I think that most countries now have a better understanding that regional cooperation is the only realistic option to have access to reliable QI services. Establishing recognized QI services is not an easy undertaking and requires the commitment of both the public and private sector, which is even more difficult as most countries in our region are very small, like New Caledonia. How did we achieve this? For example, by creating a governance structure with national focal point for standardization, metrology, and testing, with the help of implementation partners like Standard Australia and the National Measurement Institute from Australia. And when we conduct capacity development measures to raise the level of knowledge about QI in the region, followed by consultation with ministries, stakeholders, laboratories through surveys and discussion to assess the state of national QI as well as local needs. The next step is the establishment of regional coordination mechanism for standardization, metrology, and conformity assessment, such as the new Pacific Regional Standards Committee, which will coordinate the development of regional standards and promote their use. The initiative has also conducted value chain analysis on kava, cassava, coconuts, and white fruit as being products with export potential in the Pacific countries. We aim to overcome quality challenges along the value chain and to get the private sector involved in the initiative. The next phase of PQI initiative will be to jointly develop regional strategies for the expansion of standardization, metrology, and testing. As you certainly know, QI cuts across all areas of life, beyond trades such as health, energy, climate change, and disaster management. And the involvement of all over bilateral and regional programs will become more important in the future. Can we go to the second question? So we all know that standards ensure consistency in the essential characteristics of products and services, including quality, ecology, safety, economy, reliability, compatibility, interoperability, efficiency, and cost effectiveness. Standards codify knowledge and facilitate its transfer and its exchange. They are therefore a valuable source of knowledge. Standards prevent reinventing the wheel. They bundle expertise and make it accessible to all. For example, it was the coherence of European standards that enabled the establishment of a single European market and enabled the European Union to develop its own regulatory system. There are only few harmonized standards in the Pacific, which means that there is no effective tool to sharing our knowledge between Pacific Island Forum countries. We are very different from Europe because we don't have any border common. The Pacific Islands are characterized by different levels of industrial development and limited resources. In addition, the small size of our domestic market makes it difficult to implement the entire ecosystem needed to improve quality of products and services. This includes standards, metrology, quality assessment, product inspection, testing, certification, and so on. The Pacific faces huge challenge exacerbated by climate change. Therefore, we need to reconsider our approach and focus on issues that are relevant for our region and reflects the specificity of our country. We can only succeed by working together. That's why the Pacific Regional Standard Committee was created to progressively harmonize our standard system, to share and strengthen our know-how and skills of our country in order to promote development and resilience. The committee will help us to redefine our value and needs, will allow us to develop our own Oceanian identity from some selected product, technology, and processes. This is not primarily about writing standards, because we are too small to write standards, but adapting regional and international standards to the specificity of our region. By involving local stakeholders, we will be able to maintain the uniqueness of our products and services. The sector as identified so far include food, climate change, building and construction, e-commerce, tourism, and several others. You can see on this slide the diversity of our different products in each country. This diversity opens up opportunities for the Standard Committee to involve a large base of local stakeholders in standardization activity for the benefits of the economy and Pacific people.
Jamil, just to confirm, are you done with your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jamil. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for our question, but just now maybe just invite our next moderator, Mr. Ravi Kevalram, who will lead us through the second part of our sessions. Ravi, over to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I am able to unmute, but I'm not able to start my video, but hopefully you guys can at least hear me all right.
Ravi.
Yeah, okay, great. So I think the video function's locked down, so my apologies of that, but also probably doesn't matter too much because of the IT issues we were having at the start. I've had to move back to my office, which is a much less salubrious environment, so you're not missing much by not being able to see the video. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you and be part of this forum today. I'd like to begin by, excuse me, acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking to you today, the Ngunnawal people. And the second thing I would like to do by way of introduction is to thank the Secretariat, the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, for this opportunity. We are very delighted to partner with the Secretariat across a range of issues, and in fact recently at the WTO Ministerial Conference, the work that Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Island countries, including the Secretariat Geneva office, it was a really great partnership, and we're glad to see that continue across an entire agenda, including this aid for trade important work. Given time, I won't take up too much more by way of introduction because I'm very keen to get to our two eminent speakers, but just wanted to highlight to you that from Australia's perspective, of course, we are strong supporters and endorse the Pacific Aid for Trade strategy. To us, trade is a key part of our engagement in the Pacific, and we've always seen trade as being key to contributing to resilience, to sustainable growth, to economic prosperity. And that's why, in addition to the examples that you heard already through our previous speakers, you know, we're so keen to be part of and support things that help build better business environment, that help market access opportunities through the standards work, that help reduce red tape. We are very big supporters of the labor mobility programs, that we have in the region, obviously. And a key element of all of this for some, but not all Pacific members is the PESA Plus agreement, which Australia is a very strong supporter of for the region. And through that, there is a range of activity that's connected to PESA Plus, which I won't go into here, but also regional activity like Pacific Trade and Invest, Pacific Private Sector Development Initiative, Market Development Facility, and Pacific Horticulture and Agriculture Market Access Program, which is these are programs that are more across the region, not limited just to PESA Plus parties. And there's some very, very important work happening through them, including, for example, the work being done on the Kava commercial pilot. So there's a lot going on in this space. We're very glad to be part of this. And that's enough from me. I will now turn to our first panelist, Ms. Betty Chung, who is Acting Mission Director for USAID to the Philippines, Pacific Islands, and Mongolia, to talk about aid for trade and the US's broader engagement with the region. Ms. Chung oversees USAID programming and staff in 12 Pacific Island countries, has a very distinguished career working in USAID, including missions to Indonesia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and is very well placed to speak to us today on this. Thank you very much. And you have, let's say, 6 minutes. Thanks.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Ravi, and everyone. I, too, cannot start my video. I'm locked out of it, but I hope you can hear me. Hello from Manila. As Ravi mentioned, oh, you can hear me. No problem. Okay, I see a wave. Great. I just want to say on behalf of the United States government, I thank the Pacific Islands Forum Secretariat for inviting me to this event. Your vision has been an important cornerstone in promoting economic growth, trade, and e-commerce in the region. We know the pandemic exacted a heavy economic toll in the Pacific Islands, and I applaud your initiatives to advance trade and investment as the region looks toward recovery. Let me reiterate the U.S. government's support for the aims and objectives of the Pacific Aid for Trade strategy. We also believe that e-commerce and better connectivity are a vital means for Pacific Island enterprises to grow and access new markets, and for the regional economies to attract new investments. Over the past several years, the United States has been increasingly focused on promoting e-commerce as an important driver to create sustainable and market-based solutions to support the growth of micro, small, and medium enterprises. The Biden administration's Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, or IPEF, underlines the U.S. government's support for the growth of the digital economy in the Pacific. This framework centers on earning greater consumer trust in the digital economy, freedom of access to information, facilitating the use of digital technologies, promoting resilient and secure digital infrastructure, and avoiding discriminatory and trade distortive practices in the digital economy. Our economic growth policy also seeks to promote private sector-led economic growth as one of the means to solve development challenges. We believe local businesses are key to growth and development. Last March of 2022, or earlier this year, USAID and private sector partners held an event through the Alliance for E-Trade Development, a global development alliance between USAID and 12 leading private sector partners, including Google, DHL, MasterCard, PayPal, UPS, and Visa. The event promoted Pacific micro, small, and medium enterprises to engage in digital trade. The event led to a number of partnerships in the region. For instance, MasterCard has trained about 30 small, medium enterprises in Fiji to improve their selling through e-commerce, and is working with a local bank to introduce a digital payment gateway. Similarly, DHL also plans to train and mentor small and medium enterprises in Fiji in conducting cross-border e-commerce. There are also discussions to introduce Google's Plus Codes pilot program in Samoa, PNG, and Vanuatu. To further support the growth of e-commerce in the region, the United States plans to continue working with Pacific Island countries to increase access to high-speed, affordable, and reliable internet, and to digital and business skills training. One example is in Palau, where we've partnered with Australia and Japan to finance an undersea fiber optic cable. Let's see if I can start my video. I don't know if you'll be able to see. Hello, this is me in Manila. One example is in Palau, where we've partnered with Australia and Japan to finance an undersea fiber optic cable. This cable will support Palau's efforts to realize the economic and development benefits of increased and strengthened digital connectivity. We'll also jointly work with the Pacific Island. We also currently jointly work with Pacific Island countries to advance an open, secure, and reliable internet, seek interoperable regulatory environments, and support market-based technical standards for emerging technologies. I'm pleased to announce that towards the end of this year, USAID will be launching an activity aimed at expanding digital connectivity, upgrading digital skills, strengthening cybersecurity measures, and creating the enabling regulatory framework in support of the growth of the digital economy in the region. This activity will further boost U.S. government support for the goals of the Pacific Aid for Trade strategy. For trade to prosper in the region, the impacts of climate change and the resiliency of the regional economies should be taken into account. I'd like to highlight USAID's Climate Ready project that aims to develop climate adaptation policies, facilitate access to climate finance from international adaptation funds, and improve adaptation project management skills and systems. To date, USAID has helped Pacific Island countries access more than $420 million from various international funds, such as the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, and the Global Environment Facility. Recognizing that coastal fisheries are vital to the livelihoods of most Pacific Island countries, USAID also launched in 2021 an activity aimed at strengthening capacities on community-based ecosystem approach to fisheries management and increasing constituencies demanding sustainable coastal fisheries and biodiversity conservation. This activity will also develop and scale private sector partnerships that mobilize and enhance coastal fishery supply chains to contribute to the growth of a blue economy in the Pacific Islands region. To further support community-based efforts and enterprise development, USAID's Pacific American Fund is extending grants to civil society organizations and small businesses to cope with economic and social impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, increase climate change and disaster resilience, promote economic growth, and facilitate market-based enterprise development. It also increases biodiversity and seeks to increase biodiversity and sustainable natural resource management. So as of today, the fund has made several grants worth over $2 million to civil society organizations in the Federated States of Micronesia, Fiji, and Palau, and seeks to support the Pacific communities to cope with the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We also seek to increase disaster resilience, promote market-based development, adopt sustainable natural resource management, and enhance the climate resilience of community agriculture production. The Pacific American Fund will also address other challenges, such as gender inequality and gender-based violence. It's important that aid for trade strategies aim for broad-based, inclusive, equitable, and resilient growth. We request consideration of community-based impacts and effects on the region's micro, small, and medium enterprises, particularly women-owned or women-led businesses. Also, mitigating climate change impacts for the fisheries and tourism sectors in the region. Let me reiterate the United States government's support for the Pacific Aid for Trade strategy. We look forward to continuing our partnership with our Pacific Island neighbors as we seek to expand trade, investment, and economic growth in the region. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. And I'm joined by USAID's Senior Economic Growth Advisor based in Manila, Philippines, Mr. John Avila. And we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have during the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Betty, and much appreciate. I sent Betty a little private message about time and like, bang, she finished exactly on that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Much appreciated. And I see that I can apparently start my video as well. So let me try and do that. But let's not hold up. Sorry, just to the technical team. I am responding to your request for me to start video. And there you go, it has started. Okay, thanks very much again, Betty. Now to our second speaker, also someone very well credentialed to talk to us about this topic, and that is Ms. Shamika Sirman from UNCTAD, Director of the Division on Technology and Logistics. And the focus will be, of course, supporting priorities under the strategy, as well as emerging priorities that may be relevant for future iterations, particularly, of course, in the e-commerce and digital economy and trade logistics space, which is a lot there. Over to you. Thanks very much, Shamika.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you for inviting me for this very important session. So I think you wanted me to share some of the highlights of UNCTAD's work and how we have aligned ourselves for the Pacific aid for trade strategy and especially the regional focus of the strategy. So let me talk to you a bit about our work in the areas of trade facilitation, non-tariff measures, and e-commerce and the digital economy, and also share a bit of lessons and what, as you said, Ravi, what are the priorities that we see emerging for the region as you go forward with the strategy. So let me start with ASYCUDA. I think many of you know we support countries to build sophisticated digital platforms for customs administrations. And increasingly, we are focusing on developing single window environments. And the results are very quick, and you can see them on the ground, increased revenues for the governments and reduction in all sorts of red tape, increased transparency, and so forth. The results are significant, and we have seen these results in the Pacific, and I'm very happy to say that. Now, with the recently concluded agreement with the EU, ASYCUDA basically is now in the entire region. And while my staff are on the ground for the last 20 plus years, our support has been channeled through this highly effective ASYCUDA support mechanism for the Pacific. Sorry, and we call it ASMP. Now, this regional mechanism has supported customs administrations to implement reform and modernization programs, and it is self-sustaining, and this is important, and provides training and peer support to customs across the region, and most importantly, support each other in emergencies. And this is really a good practice. And in fact, we are trying to replicate this regional mechanism in other regions. So this on the ground, peer support, peer-to-peer talk, connections across customs, as we have seen immense benefits to the region. Now, let me also talk a bit about the work that we have been doing for the last 4 years with the PESA Plus countries to ensure transparency in trade procedures, especially through building trade information portals. Now, I know a lot of people think trade information portal, first and foremost, is for traders to get information in one place and to make trade easy for them. But there's another angle to trade portals. Trade portals can also be used by the authorities to reduce red tape. Okay, our dream is to support a regional trade portal so countries can compare trade processes and procedures and take steps to cut the red tape. And to build some sort of a friendly, a healthy competition. And such a regional approach has been a great success in East Africa, and we would hope this would be taken up by the Pacific too. Now, another area of our work is in non-tariff measures, and again, pretty much anchored in a regional initiative, the Pacific Quality Infrastructure Initiative, led by PIFS. So thank you, PIFS. And our work has enhanced the transparency in trade regulations by mapping all regulations systematically And over a decade of work in collecting and analyzing NTM data and collating and reporting, we know that information is not easily accessible and no business friendly. I think Viraj, you mentioned some of these business unfriendliness of information. And by the way, harmonization and regulation can also reduce trade costs by 25%. So this is another area I think need to pay more attention, the NTMs. Now, and then the e-commerce and the digital economy, the presentations that were presented shows that this is going to be a big focus. And I think this is rightly so. And UNCTAD is part of the joint initiative of the Pacific Digital Economy Program, along with our partners, UNCDF, UNDP, and in close partnership with the PIFs. And again, I want to highlight that this initiative is closely aligned with the Pacific Regional E-commerce Strategy Roadmap, for which the different national e-trade readiness assessment that we have undertaken and the regional assessment have served as the basis, and which now guides regional activities. For instance, the recent training of national statistical officers on measuring the digital economy organized by UNCTAD with PIFs and Pacific community. And you will see many such programs that we are launching to bring the region together, to make sure that we are not taxing already overstretched policymakers. So we come together as partnerships with partners, and we also bring regional aspects. So let me finally assure you that at UNCTAD, we pay serious attention to deliver regional programs in the Pacific and in close collaboration with our partners. And let me also thank Ravi, our development partners, Australia, EU, New Zealand, for their steadfast support. And then I think a couple of things that I want to highlight, by having been there for a long time with Asikuda, about 25 years, I mean, we've been since the early 1990s, and work on trade facilitation, NTM, and the e-commerce. Couple of things that comes to mind as going forward, very, very big priorities. Number one, consider affordable and high quality internet connectivity as a critical infrastructure. And it is no longer a luxury. And many several Latin American countries have even declared it's a right, it's a human right, having internet access. By legalizing that, there's a promise made to the population that this connectivity will be delivered. Build digital skills, have basic regulations placed for commerce, in place for consumer protection, data privacy, and cybersecurity, and be ready to benefit from the fast growing digital economy. It's here and it is here to stay. And it's a fast moving technology. Either we will be left behind or we jump on the bandwagon and try to get some benefits out of it. Now, I mentioned the dearth of statistics with regard to NTMs, and this is the same with digital economy. There's a very little statistics out there in the Pacific, and statistics are extremely important for informed policymaking and reaching out to partners and making a case. So regional efforts to collect, analyze, and publish internationally comparable statistics should be promoted, and please consider this as a priority. Now, in terms of the digital economy, Pacific is still at an early stage of development. However, it would be good to pay attention to emerging issues such as cross-border data flows and Industry 4.0 technologies, have a voice at international fora where these issues are discussed and sometimes agreed upon. Pacific needs to be there and bring your views. Now, last point I wanted to mention, I think Betty, you mentioned this about the whole climate issues. We know the Pacific is prone to disasters. Unfortunately, it will even be more with the climate change hitting the region so fast and so hard. And being prepared is everything. Preparedness of the customs administration is also critical to facilitate emergency relief goods in the aftermath of a disaster. And we find this is an aspect authorities do not pay much attention to until it is too late. And this is the experience we have with Asikuda on the ground. Now, UNCTAD could provide you with additional support in this area with the regional deployment of what we call the automated system for relief emergency consignment. And we have an acronym for that. It's called ASYREC program, ASYREC. Now, this aligns and supports the mandate of the Pacific Humanitarian Team, and we are already piloting ASYREC in Vanuatu right now. And I think it is extremely important for the region to think hard and have a regional approach to have customs needs to be prepared, because when the emergency consignment come, we find it extremely difficult for customs to go through the customs code and find out which goods should they enter, should they pay tariff, not. And we've seen a lot of medicines and also so other emergency, the essential goods just lying in ports in many countries. So this is another point I want to bring to your attention. So thank you, Ravi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shamika, and thank you also very much for sticking to time. Colleagues, I might actually throw back to the chair because we're right on time. I've been keeping an eye on the Q&A that have come in, and I just will throw to just one question, which was Nora asking Betty about best online site to find more information. So Betty, if you could just give us a very quick address that you think would be most useful, that would be great. And then, as I say, with apologies, I'm sorry that we probably best close the session. And the other reason I'm doing that is because, of course, 8 o'clock Geneva time is a session on supporting inclusive e-commerce capacity development in Southeast Asia and the Pacific, impact stories from the ground, which Australia is chairing. So I feel I have to make sure that I get people there on time. Betty, did you want to say anything very quickly?
Yeah, I would say please take a look at USAID Philippines, Pacific Islands, and Mongolia website. Ping us. You can also email me directly at bchung@usaid.gov, and I'll put you in touch with the correct people. And a quick plug, Facebook, USAID Pacific Islands. That's another great way to get in touch with us as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And colleagues, some of the other questions, happy to continue conversation through PIF's colleagues as well, because there are some important and weighty topics there. But with that, I'll stop, and thank you very much, both Betty and Shamika, for the huge amount of content that you managed to fit into your time. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Thank you, Director Shamika, as well as Betty, and all our 4 presenters, Viraj, as well as Jamil. I think we are now going to just a very quick wrap up to just thank you, all the participants. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time for questions and answers, but I think we've taken note of a number of the points you've raised. And with that, we thank you for your participations today. And also just finally to welcome all of you as well to attend the launch of the e-commerce portal that will be launched end of August, and invitations will come shortly. But also I think some of the presentations for those who are interested, we will be more than happy to share. And once again, thank you for the opportunities to share the experience of the region in terms of implementations of the Pacific Equity Strategy. And thank you, DFAT, for partnering with the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat. With that, thank you very much and good evening from Suva, Fiji.